Hey everyone, welcome back to the Distinct Mastering YouTube channel. I've got a very special episode for you today. I was asked by a friend of mine named Jeff Corrigan, aka Turbo, who is an amazing photographer, videographer, and a part of a very famous promotion company and record label out here named Music is for Lovers, owned by my friend named Jimbo. And they do amazing events out here in San Diego, and their music is known all over the world. And so they had Sebastien Leger at Camino Riviera, and Jeff is regularly filming and recording these events. Now, I'm not usually touching the audio for these, but because this was such a special one, Jeff asked if I could master the audio. And so there were a few things he was having trouble with. One, mastering for YouTube, getting the right loudness and getting to the target loudness that YouTube requires without having any penalties, but also getting the audio to be clean and solid. So obviously I went in and did a little digging into the information on how he was getting the recordings done. And from what I gathered, he has two sources of audio. One, he's got the camera audio, which is being fed from the DJ mixer out of the DJM 900. And obviously it's not ideal to be going into the camera, but he told me he does it for syncing purposes because he's also got another camera with a condenser mic that's above the DJ collecting crowd noise. So before we get into how I mastered this audio, let's take a look at the YouTube here. And I suggest you check out Music is for Lovers YouTube. I'll leave you a link down below in the description. They're an amazing group out here. They do amazing events, and you know, they got a lot of great content on this channel too. So before we get into the actual Pro Tools session, I'm going to show you the YouTube stats for nerds. And if you're not sure what that is, you can right click on any video on YouTube and get the stats for nerds. And as you can see, this video is right on target with where we should be for YouTube. Content loudness is almost right at 0, and we're at 97%. At 100% volume, meaning my volume is at 100% from my computer, which I'm using an interface, so the interface is controlling the volume. And my target was right underneath YouTube specs by literally 0.3 dB. Now, YouTube measures in LUFS, which is loudness units full scale. And I have a previous video on trying to get your podcast louder, which this can apply for the same thing. I'll leave you a link to that down below as well. So as you can see, I'm pretty on target. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna see here is you're gonna see two sources. And this is my basic mastering template, by the way, which I spoke about in a previous video, and I gave away both my Pro Tools mastering templates, and I created the same thing in Ableton. So if you wanna go check those out, go grab those, they're free. I'll leave you a link to those as well. Now, the first thing you're gonna see here is you're gonna see two cameras. This is the audio source, and this one in the green is the crowd noise that I spoke about. One of the things that Jeff also gave me on this reference track was his rough master. Now, he only needed the audio for Sebastien Leger, so that's why you see his audio is shorter than this audio. The audio above is a full camera recording, so this was the opening DJ. And so the first thing I actually did was line up his rough master with this audio. So I actually had to go in and find it and find the exact point, find a good point. As you can see, I sliced right here and sliced here, moved things around, left a marker, and this is exactly now in time. So his audio is in time with these two cameras. So I had to do that manually, but I wanted to be able to flip back and forth between his audio and my audio. Now, to be honest with you, I'll go through the plugins and show you what I did. It's really not magic, it's just skill. With the crowd, I actually went in and it looks like I followed suit sort of with what he did. He said he boosted around 3 or 4K. That's not a good frequency to me to boost in crowd noise, in my opinion. I went for 1040. I also boosted the sides, so I used mid-side EQ. And if you're unsure what that is, I have a video on that. I'll leave you a link down below. I boosted the sides at around 1100 hertz, 1.82 dB. And then I cut the low end out of the mid channel at 358 hertz. So I was just getting rid of any rumble that the mic might have been picking up in the center channel. My goal with this was to actually widen the crowd noise a little wider than the actual recording, and it gives the environment, you know, puts you kind of in the space. And this is kind of a unique trick because what I'm doing with mid-side EQ right here is I am just creating a bit of width. But I also boosted in the stereo channel left right. This is not a mid-side node. This is a regular stereo node. So what's happening here is I'm just getting a little presence boost. Let's go ahead and solo this crowd noise so you can see what I'm talking about. It's really low, so we're gonna go ahead and bypass this. Okay, for the purpose of this video, so you can actually hear this, I'm gonna boost this wave up quite a bit because it's really low crowd noise. Now you can actually hear what's going on. So this is bypassed with the EQ. And as you can see, what I basically did, as I told you, I took out all the low end, I boosted so we'll go one by one. We're gonna turn on the presence boost at 1K. I'm gonna filter out that low end in the mid channel, and I'm gonna boost that side channel. And that's what you're left with. That's all I did with the crowd noise. So let's bring this back down to 0. And voila. Now, I don't want to get a huge copyright strike, so I'm not going to play a ton of this audio, but let's go ahead and take everything off that I did. So if you don't understand my routing here, what's happening is these two tracks are feeding into this tape track. And the reason why I decided in my mastering template, I actually don't have this. I just go straight to EQ, straight to compression. The reason why I decided to go into some tape auxiliary bus is because I felt like the recording was a little sterile. And what I mean by that is it just sounded very unnatural. It wasn't clean. It lacked definition. It just sounded like it was recorded from a camera. So, you know, basically the A to D converters weren't great. And what I wanted to do was give them some warmth. I wanted to give them a little analog saturation. So you're feeding the tape from the output of these two channels into the tape bus. And that's what I did. The first thing I did is I added some tape. And this is the Virtual Tape Machines plugin by Slate. I've been fooling around with this plugin a little bit. There's some great tape plugins by Waves. I love the J37. There's some good ones by UAD that I own, like the Studer or the Ampex. You should check those out. You know, any tape plugin can get you the same result. I didn't even really do anything. It's barely getting any tape. This is before, this is after. The next thing that I did is I ran it through a little bit of saturation, and I used the Plugin Alliance black box, and I didn't really do much. All I did was add a little bit of saturation and a little bit on the pentode. Everything else is set to standard. So let's go ahead, bypass this. Now my goal there was just to get a bit of loudness out of that because the recording was so low. It was recorded a little too low in my opinion. Good thing that the signal to noise ratio wasn't bad because when you bring everything up, but you know, this is a YouTube video. The recording doesn't have to be perfect. They're doing so many of these videos and so many of these events that, you know, the audio is going to be different each time, and as long as they're getting a decent quality, that works for them since it's just for YouTube. You know, they're just pushing out tons of this content. Okay, so after the tape bus, the next thing I did is I fed my EQ bus, which leads into my standard mastering template. I go into my standard DigiDesign Avid EQ here. I didn't even really do anything. It looks like I'm just bringing the output down 6 dB to give myself a little headroom, and I just have my standard 30 Hertz low cut, and that's it. You know, there's nothing special there. I'm just rolling off some low end. Play this with, without. So you're getting a little volume change there. And I'm just building in some headroom for myself to work here. I did want to get some of that saturation. Another thing I could have done is just turn the output down, which would be typically what I do, but I guess I just did it here. Now, next I fed into a Pultec Pro. What I did here, everything here is 0. Now the Pultec itself automatically gives it some warmth. It's recreating an analog hardware unit, and it's one of my favorite EQs. I've made a video on this. If you want to check that out, I'll leave you a link down below. All I did here was boost 3 dB at 100 Hertz and 16K, almost 3 dB. just to give a little clarity at the top end and just a little more oomph on the bottom, because like I said, I felt like the A to D converters weren't great, and I am losing a little low end with this saturation. Not much, because I'm very cautious with how I work, but some saturation can take away a little bit of your low end. Now, I made sure that I wasn't getting any low end affected by my saturation, but I just felt like it still wasn't enough, so I gave it a little more oomph. So this is before and after. And as you can see, my moves are extremely subtle. I'm not doing a whole lot to this audio. I'm just getting it to a place where I want it to be at a baseline, and I'm going to get it where I need it from there. The next thing I did is I used a Manly Massive Passive. And this is a cool EQ. It's by UAD. It's recreating some hardware. And what I did here was I did 2 boosts. It looks like at an 8K and 220. Now, the reason I chose this EQ is I did choose it for a bit of color. It has a nice, very clear and airy sound. It's almost one of the most transparent EQs I've ever used as well. It's got a bit of a silkiness to it. And I chose this for this project for that reason. So this is giving it a little more power and drive in the 220 region. And at 8K, I'm just giving it a little more top end. Just a little more, I don't want to say clarity, but yeah, it's adding some clarity. It's adding some crispness, I guess is a better word. This is after, before. And as you can see, the Manly Massive Passive almost breathes some life and energy into the music. You know, I was looking for how am I going to take this recording that was done on this camera audio and make it sound pristine as possible. And so as you can see, I'm just little by little getting the quality better and better with tools that and tactics I know how to do. So the next thing that I did was I used an Oxford inflator, and what this is a clipping tool. So I really am just chopping off some of the peaks, and I know that Jeff said he did not want to destroy Sebastian's dynamics, but this is a way to, yes, this is going to destroy a little bit of the dynamics, but I'm very cautious with how I use it. And what it's also going to do is it's going to shorten the crest to peak ratio, meaning that the difference between the highest peak and the bottom of the peak, the crest, it's going to bring that up. It's going to clip off the top of those peaks and get me a little more loudness without actually increasing the volume. Let me show you how that works. This is before. This is after. And as you can see, I just did a before and after there too. So it's just apparently a little bit louder, but I'm not destroying the dynamics. And I'm doing that because I knew I needed to get a little more loudness out of this because I want it to sound good on YouTube, but I know that YouTube has rules. If you don't know, YouTube has loudness normalization applied to all of their videos, which I've spoken about a lot on this channel. And that is why you're going to see I mastered for 2 different versions. So this was just a way to get a little more volume, a little more oomph without adding crazy processing, without crushing the dynamics. And the Oxford inflator is a great plugin. Another good one is SIR Tools Clipper. And if you want to explore clipping, or if you want me to make a video on clipping tools, drop me a comment down below and I will. So the next thing that we have is the EQ bus is feeding a compressor bus, which is typical on my mastering template. And the compressor that I chose for this was the API 2500, another hardware recreation. This is a UAD plugin. One of my favorite bus compressors. It has amazing color. It's got an air to it that's just, it's not like an SSL. It's not warm and punchy. It's more airy and dry in my opinion, but I like to use it for a lot of masters with real instruments, say acoustic instruments, acoustic music, rock music. I love it for that stuff. I also like to use it on drums. I like to use it on a lot of things. But for mastering and for this project, this is what I chose. And what I did, surprisingly, you're going to see here that I have the attack all the way slow and the ratio just at 1.5 and the release very fast. Not the fastest it could be, because if you go to the right here, you can use this release variable. And then I have the knee at soft, and I'm using the tone. Now this has 3 tones. It has loud, medium, and normal. And then I've got a little makeup gain here. So let's go ahead and play it before and then after. And what I'm doing is I'm getting loudness with this, and I'm also getting a lot of color from the unit because I'm giving it some gain. By giving it the gain, that's how you're going to get color out of your compressors. And so if you want to see what some of these sound like, hard knee, that's pushing the music too much. I wanted a soft glue on this. Here's the loud tone, medium tone, normal. And the normal to me just gave it the nicest, smoothest character. I also wanted this to smoothen out some of the transients in the recording. I thought some of the transients were a little brittle. Some of that is due to the recording quality. And once again, you know, he can't prevent that, but I can try to enhance that. And so this compressor is just acting like a nice glue compressor. So the next plugin that you see is just a limiter, and I didn't use this on the YouTube version. What I did use this for was the normal version. So if you look down here, there's two tracks. One's louder and one says YouTube. And this is the master that I supplied for them to use for YouTube that you saw on the Stats for Nerds. And this one was supplied for SoundCloud. This one is your standard true peak value of 0.1. This one is a YouTube standard spec at a average LUFS of 14. This one is set to a YouTube standard spec of minus 1.0 true peak value, which is what I use this Pro L2 limiter for here. And as you could see, I must have did it manually and not saved it, but what I would have done here, oh yeah, the last one I did was 0.1. So for the YouTube version, I would have set this to minus 1.0. And for the regular version, I set this to 0.1. All I'm letting this do is just acting as a brick wall and getting rid of the intersample peaks that might occur, so there's no distortion when the file is converted by YouTube. Or SoundCloud is actually lossless, but say if you were to upload this to any streaming platform like Spotify or Apple Music, they all go through a conversion process, and you don't want any digital artifacts in your conversion. So that is why you need to adhere to the recommended true peak value standards that each platform suggests. Now, it's not always easy to supply multiple masters. For distribution purposes, for music, for example, usually you only get one, so you really have to make some choices here when doing mastering. So then, what I have here once again is the reference. So let's go ahead and mute my stuff. And that's mine. This is Jeff's original. Now, this is going to get a little louder because I'm going to turn this on. This is the one I supplied as the real master. So comparing mine now to his, I got a lot more oomph, I got a lot more power, drive, clarity. It just sounds better. Everything sounds crispier. And to truly compare the two, you need to level match them. So what you can do is mute mine here, and I have a louder version here, and we'll take this down 4. It's about 4 dB. That's going to be... Oh, sorry, I had that doubled up. So here's mine, louder master. And then here's his. And as you can see, it just sounds thinner. It doesn't sound as punchy. There's just something different about mine. And it's not magic, like I said. It's just skillful work with audio. Okay, now one last thing I want to discuss is metering, and I went ahead and muted these tracks. I disabled the limiter. I want to go back to just the basics and my work. Okay, so what I want to show you here is just what I did for the YouTube version. All I did was actually use the compressor. I didn't even use a limiter. I only used the limiter chopping off those peaks at the end. And as you can see, when I play this, I'm hitting right at about minus 14 on this meter. And it's going to vary over the course of the mix, because this is like I think a 2-hour mix by Sebastien Leger. It's got amazing music, by the way. And it, you know, moving around the session, it's still hitting around minus 14. Gets a little louder over here. So here it's about minus 12. But the one thing you need to remember is YouTube standard of minus 14 LUFS is it's not one momentary thing. LUFS stands for loudness units full scale. And what it is actually a measurement over time. I have the loudness penalty plugin in here, which can also show you how you're doing as far as YouTube standards. But to really get an accurate representation of this, you need to let this thing play all the way through. But according to this, I'm spot on. And I can actually preview this in YouTube with this little arrow by clicking. So then this would be Spotify. So I want to preview in YouTube, and now I'm previewing in YouTube. And this is what it's supposed to sound like on YouTube. So that's a cool plugin. They have a website called Loudness Penalty. I also went afterwards and uploaded it there just to verify. Actually, I did not because the file was too long. I apologize about that. I did try it, but it works for music. Did not work for something like this. But it's a great website, loudnesspenalty.com. Ian Shepard and the guys at Meter Plugs made that. Great plugin I use a lot for mastering. So as you can see, once again, I'm hitting about minus 14 on that meter consistently. And then when I bring in this limiter, I'm getting a little louder. You know, I'm getting minus 9. I didn't want to go too crazy with this. Let's go ahead and look at my final. I think I adjusted something today. Oh, this is minus, let's take that back to 0. And it looked like I had this reference lowered in volume too. So let me zero that out and let's go back and forth now. So here's my louder master. So there I'm getting about minus 8, getting a little over. There's a little bit. This is Jeff's master. Doesn't sound as good. Still good enough, but not like that. And then my YouTube, mine's gonna be lower than Jeff's because he was going for a little bit more loudness to be kind of in between SoundCloud and YouTube, where I gave him 2 files. And what all he, you know, that's why I think I had this down minus 2.6 to match what he was, match his to mine to go back and forth. So his, mine. Everything's just in your face. It just takes time to get good at. And so once again, if you have any questions about this or mastering or anything in between, please drop me a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Once again, my name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering, and I hope you enjoyed this. Have a nice day.